Paglagipsi. My name is Lynette. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm from Unalaska. Today I will be your MC host. Welcome. Thank you all for coming. Before we start, we would like to give a land acknowledgement and prayer. Today we gather on the ancestral lands of the Nacotchtank and Piscataway people, the original stewards of this land, now known as the District of Columbia. We share our respect to their elders, past and present, as well as their current leaders and culture bearers. We share thanks to the indigenous peoples who continue to steward these lands, to honor and practice their culture and ways of life. We respectfully greet the Anacostia and Potomac River watersheds for what they have provided. Indigenous people have experienced the repercussions of colonialism, and we must work in solidarity with those who have suffered from its legacy to receive reparations, to decolonize, and to continue Indigenous ways of life. To begin to recognize and acknowledge the resilience of the Nacotchtank and Piscataway people, we ask you all to learn about the history in the lands you live on, and support local Indigenous-led organizations by supporting and uplifting their work and missions. Koyanikpak. I will now welcome esteemed Elder Nutak to share a prayer. Please give her a warm welcome.
Apang, akang, kuyanakapsi, nayoktuakapsigut. Ayukaningaluasi, kuyanaktusi. Asi nayoktuaksigut, ilokata. Nuna, suli sila, suli meklaktiwud, munakaliwi, kuyanakaniakatin.
I'll now invite Sunny to do our call to action.
Paglagipsi uvungar hruna, apaga Ray Buster Kivgok, akaga Maria Kivgok. My family is from Utqiagvik, Alaska. I work with Sovereign Iñupiat for Living Arctic. I want to thank you all here for gathering with us today. Today I just got an update that over all platforms we have over 4 million signatures to stop the Willow Project. So I want to say a big thank you to everyone who has done this. I started the large change.org petition 2 years ago before I even really got into this work. So this Willow Project has been a huge passion of mine for a long time now, but 2 years ago I started that change.org petition, and I never expected it to grow to as big as it is right now. So I appreciate you all for joining today, and if you haven't signed it yet, just go to change.org/stopwillow. And then there's also Protect the Arctic and stopwillow.org to sign those petitions as well. Call your representatives, let them know that as a United States citizen and as a community member, as a human being, that you do not support the Willow Master Development Plan. Kuyanakpak, thank you.
Thank you, Sunny. It's a little wet out here. Let me change one page. We wanted to do some chants to get you guys involved a little bit. So, I will start with a warm-up. If I say stop Willow, you say stop Willow. Stop Willow. Stop Willow. Stop Willow. That's great. Good warm-up, but I need you to be a little louder. Okay, when I say protect the Arctic, you say stop Willow. Protect the Arctic. 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 Stop Willow. Okay, one more, as loud as you can. Protect the Arctic. Stop Willow. Ooh, thank you. Okay, good work, everyone. So today we have 6 Iñupiat speakers who have come here from all over the Arctic Circle to share parts of their hearts through story sharing, experiences, and Indigenous knowledge. Please listen with your hearts and minds, be respectful, and recognize the resilience, strength, and knowledge being shared here today by our Iñupiat speakers. It's an honor to welcome our first speaker, the Executive Director of Sovereign Iñupiat for a Living Arctic, Sikinik.
No, I'm okay. Pagalgifsi, everyone. Welcome. I'm so moved to see everyone here and flying from such a long way. We have elders, youth, and those in between that are demanding a just transition. So, Uvanga Sikinik, Akaga Harriet Mappin, Apaga Raymond Mappin, Akaluga Lina Kalhakpak Simmons, Apaga si Abe Simmons Jr., Savaktunga, Sovereign Iñupiat for a Living Arctic Executive Director. My name is Sikinik Mappin. I just did my traditional introduction, introducing my parents, my grandparents, and so my community knows who I am. My mother is Harriet Mappin, my father is Raymond Mappin. My grandmother and grandfather are the late Lena Kalhakpak Simmons and Abe Simmons Jr. I was born in Utqiagvik, Alaska, and raised in Fairbanks, Alaska. I am the Executive Director of Sovereign Iñupiat for Living Arctic, also known as SILA. We are a small grassroots organization founded in 2019 by 3 young Iñupiat community members concerned about our future. We attended a frontline oil and gas conference held in Ponca, Oklahoma. We listened to community members from all over the nation share their experiences, concerns, and hope. The dots started to connect. From the East Coast to the desert to the tundra, we face the same threat. And I know that rhymes, I didn't mean for it. Many held in an economic hostage situation, dependent on a few jobs offered. They told stories that were ours. High cancer rates, sick animals, respiratory illness, and a rapidly changing environment. We decided to share the knowledge we gained in an accessible way. We created our website in a space for those who share the same concerns and hope. Since then, we have tried, failed, tried again, and continue to grow and learn. While navigating the environmental and conservation world, we recognized a history and pattern of leaving indigenous groups behind. Some groups, good intentions or not, did harm to our people, our ability to practice subsistence and be stewards of the land. Our goal was to work with these groups who were willing to hear hard truths, the history of green colonization, and how to go forward in a better way. Issues that once left the majority of Iñupiat people out of the conversation were changing. The goal of stopping the bad continued on to how to foster the good. We do not represent all Iñupiat people, not even the majority. We represent a small but mighty group who speak from their heart, experience, and Iñupiat perspective. From urban Iñupiat like myself to elders living in our communities, we are guided by our board members, principles, and Iñupiat values. We do this work with love for our people, love for the land that sustains us and all it has to offer. I want to take my director hat off and speak from my personal experience and perspective. I was born in Utqiagvik, Alaska, and moved to Fairbanks, Alaska as a baby, or a very young child. Although we lived hundreds of miles away from where my mother grew up in Nuqset and Utqiagvik, I don't ever remember being told I was Iñupiat. We just lived it. I remember hearing my mother speaking our language with my aunties and wishing so badly I could understand them. All of us cousins huddling around the cardboard on the table while muktuk whale and my favorite, tutuqaq, frozen caribou, would be cut up and our hands slapped if we tried to eat it before they were done cutting. My appa, grandfather, gifting me my silver fox parka and muklaks, teaching me how to ari, Iñupiat dance, outside of my home in Fairbanks. I didn't think of myself as less Iñupiat, just a different experience. I fell into addiction as a young person and lost myself. At 19, a single young mom, I started working at my native corporation, Arctic Slope Regional Corporation. My first day on the job, the Barrow Dance Group came to perform downstairs in Anchorage, and I ran down with everyone else and heard Iñupiat drumming for the first time in years. I felt tears welling in my eyes and started falling down my face. I was confused and filled with shame for being vulnerable in public, but something reawakened in me. I started going back home to Nuqset, where my mother now lives and grandparents laid to rest, when my second child was born around 2015. When I got off the plane for the first time, I felt this emptiness I'd carried around my whole life fill up. I missed my plane back to Anchorage and was stuck in Nuqset for a week longer than planned. Luckily, I was able to attend Nuqset's anniversary and Nulukatuk, our blanket toss celebration when we catch whale. I got to visit with my Akka, my grandmother, and saw her importance in our community. People knocking on the door with caribou legs freshly caught, for her, plates of food prepared at Iñupiat, and just to see how she was doing. My daughter's birthday happened while we were stuck there as well, and I was in shock. I barely had enough to get ice cream and pre-made cake mix. I remember stocking up on top ramen to make sure I didn't burden my family too much. I realized then how important it was to have caribou, whale, seal, duck, our traditional foods for food security. I continued going back home each summer with my kids to give them the same opportunity I had, to eat our traditional foods, run around with their cousins on our homelands, and continue the Iñupiat lifestyle. The first time we were there, we were with people who caught a caribou. My oldest asked why we had killed Santa's reindeer. After I held in my giggles and explained our practices, and that this caribou wasn't one of Santa's, she and her sisters gladly ate their cooked over a campfire caribou steak. And I'll never forget the feeling when I came back one summer and got food from the Cookbik Hotel, and I saw a few people that knew me, and they said, "Welcome home." I got sober in 2016 and felt this hunger to find out more about my culture, history, and language. I was in college at the time and decided to take an Iñupiat language class and change my degree to learn the history, and the elder teaching the class grew up around my amau, my great-grandparents and family. He told me stories and history I had never heard. I also ran into my mom's cousin, my auntie, an elder from Iñupiat, who was on the board for an indigenous-led environmental organization that I later came to work for. I felt that my culture saved me, and I wanted to give back what I was given. I started learning about the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge and the Willow Project, and in 2018, me and my coworkers were invited by the native village of Iñupiat to an air quality monitoring system training that was going to be run by the local community, because ConocoPhillips, who owns the most oil and gas leases near Iñupiat, also owns the only air quality monitoring system. We met with the youth council, community members, and leaders to review a report of the emissions from the oil fields and their implications to the community. We read the top 10 pollutant side effects: loss of taste and smell, dizziness, aggression in young men, respiratory illnesses, cancers, and even changing the sex of a child in the womb from male to female. I started thinking, we have lots of women in my family. It was a running joke because we outnumbered the boy cousins. My aunt had always told me she couldn't taste or smell and had visited many doctors about it. My uncle had just recently passed away from cancer at a relatively young age. I had just heard about a young healthy man in his 20s passing away from cancer. I also witnessed the tension and divide in the community due to oil and gas development. We heard stories of people who spoke out about transitioning away from oil and gas economy, being threatened to be taken off family wills, people being blacklisted from any jobs in their communities, and intimidation and threats from opposing parties. While the Trump administration at the time dismantled major climate policies and rolled back rules governing clean air, water, wildlife, and toxic chemicals, tensions rose as projects in the Arctic were being pushed through. I have seen bully tactics to keep people quiet, leaders raising their voice at youth, telling us we are brainwashed by Big Green, and individuals having their worth as an Iñupiat person torn apart publicly by their own community and families. This is not our way, and these are not our values, and we can disagree on things but respect each other's opinions. Now, when reading the environmental impact statement at the Bureau of Land Management, that the Bureau of Land Management wants to approve, it mentions suicide 15 times. A quote from page 365, "This project would increase air and noise emissions and human activity in Iñupiat subsistence use areas, which could increase stress in some Iñupiat residents and lead to or exacerbate mental health issues such as anxiety and depression. As discussed in BLM, Bureau of Land Management, rapid modernization and development, as well as other multiple stressful conditions, including significant changes to diet, housing, and traditional culture, has led to negative health outcomes, including suicide. Suicide was the 5th leading cause of death in the North Slope Borough from 2011 to 2013, and it has remained a leading cause of death in the North Slope Borough for over 2 decades. It also states strong possibilities of the project creating further division in Iñupiat, wealth disparities, only a few job opportunities for North Slope residents, 88% of subsistence users in Iñupiat negatively affected, loss of language and cultural knowledge, and other disturbing facts. I would like to quote the late Eben Hobson, one of the great historic political leaders of the North during the Berger Report, or speech. I repeat, in all of this, we were never consulted. After the state leased our land to the oil corporations, they moved onto our land to behave in ways that would never be permitted today. Gravel, a most precious commodity in the Arctic, was removed from the riverbeds and beaches without proper regard to environmental impact. The gravel was used to build roads and paths over our old graveyards, and our sod houses at our fishing and summer camps were destroyed. Fish spawning areas were destroyed, and fish were killed during seismic exploration in our lakes. The ancient caribou migration routes began being disturbed along our coast, and many of us feel that Prudhoe Bay and associated pipeline constructions is to blame for what appears to our state game biologists to be a serious decline in our caribou herds. Our land began being littered by the junk of oil exploration. We suffered serious trespass. And that's the end of that quote. While oil and gas history in Iñupiat communities is complex, it tells us that extractive industries do not have our community's best interests at heart. As families struggled during the recent inflation and rural communities paid fuel prices higher than anyone else in the nation, ConocoPhillips had record-breaking profits. The tribal government, native city of Nuqsut, and the native village of Nuqsut have made official statements with major concerns and reservations about this project and its negative impacts on the community as a whole. Recently, a gas leak occurred near Nuqsut at the drill site CD1. I will read a quote from the letter by the tribal government of Nuqsut and the native village of Nuqsut found on our website. The Bureau of Land Management engagement with us is consistently focused on how to allow projects to go forward, how to permit the continued expansion and concentration of oil and gas activity on our traditional lands. We express our concerns, but BLM continues to weaken or waive mitigation measures, or fails to enforce them, and the impact to our life continues daily. We explain how the road will deflect caribou and make hunting more difficult, and BLM hears us asking for more road access. We say the helicopters disturb the caribou, and BLM again hears us asking for more roads. We explain our distress about the air quality from routine activities, and we are confronted with accidents like the Repsol blowout and CD1. We point out that it is becoming harder for us to harvest subsistence food, and the BLM responds with more research and monitoring, but continued activity. We speak of the significance of our traditional culture, and BLM schedules meetings during whaling season. We emphasize the importance of our life, health, and safety, and we watch as ConocoPhillips employees are evacuated from CD1. We express concerns about our lack of access to information about the CD1 accident and our fundamental responsibility to protect the people of our village, and we are accused of causing panic and alarm during the blowout. People state opposition to the endless expansion of oil development and complete encirclement of our village, and they face repercussions. It is therefore with a deep and persevering commitment to protecting our culture, health, and survival that we offer the following comments. The public and cooperating agencies process has been deeply flawed. The process for public input on this project has been disappointing and inadequate. Drilling proponents point to the 5 years this project has been under review, claiming the extensive timeline demonstrates that the plan has undergone thorough consideration. Instead, the lengthy process demonstrates the opposite. The only reason the environmental review has taken this long is because BLM and ConocoPhillips have made repeated missteps along the way. The end of that quote. We hear time and time again from Congress who support the Willow Project, claim it is a sovereignty rights issue to not allow this project to go through, yet seem to ignore the tribal government of the community most impacted by this project and minimize their concerns. Our representatives who work for the public and their constituents should represent the full picture and respect differing opinions. Biden said in his State of Union address, climate change is an existential threat. Well, I understand the political nightmare this project has become. I believe he can make the hard decision to bring us into a just transition, turn our economy into a sustainable one that benefits a majority, not the 1% like he promised. Everyone deserves access to running water, plumbing, internet, food, security, housing, and jobs without being forced to sacrifice people's health and all the land provides. Make the bold decision to invest in sustainable alternative energy now and be on the right side of history. Tavra. I would like to introduce our next speaker, our elder from Kaktovik, Robert Thompson.
My name is Robert Thompson. I'm from Kaktovik. I don't know if anybody knows where that is. It's on the edge of the Arctic Ocean. It's about 4,000 miles from here. We're having effects of climate change, and it's quite dramatic. When I first got involved in this, George Bush said we need more scientific evidence. Well,
Hold the mic like this.
okay, can you hear me now? Okay, okay. Well, anyway, I'll start again. My name's Robert Thompson. I'm from Cocktovik, and I'm here to talk about climate change. It's happening. It's not a joke. I've heard people say we need more scientific evidence. No, when I'm an Eskimo person on the North Slope being rained on in February, I don't need any more scientific evidence. Okay, the bad effects that has is on the wildlife. We're probably going to lose a polar bear. They think they'll be extinct by 2050. What's happening, the Arctic Ocean is opening, and it's a habitat for the polar bears. And when it breaks up, they have to come ashore. A lot of them don't make it. There was one case where they flew over it and found 8 dead bears floating around. And they figured 200 might have died in that incident. And now they're very sure that the polar bears where I'm at are 58% less from 10 years ago. We're seeing less cubs. The cubs can't swim all the way to the shore when the ice melts that they're on. We had 700 miles of open water a few years ago. When I first went to Cocktovik, that's close to 50 years ago, we could see the pack ice from the shore. Now there's no ice out there. And the pro-oil people say there's lots of bears. There's lots of bears on our island, up to 80, that had to come ashore because they either had to sink or swim. And so that a lot of them made it to the shore. So that's just one thing that's happening. This rain in the winter, at one point, 200 caribou died on our island. They were ingesting ice with their food, and it wore them down. In the spring, it got really cold, and they literally, a lot of them curled up and died. So these are the things that the Willow people, the congressional delegation from Alaska, don't talk about. They just talk about making money, lots of profits. They've had 47 years to set up an economy not based on oil. So now they got this Willow project, and that's their hope that they can continue on with the oil revenues. This Willow project is not just a local thing. I've been traveling to other places, and this climate change is a worldwide issue. The health of the planet is at stake. I've been down to Cochabamba, Bolivia. They're concerned. Their glacier is melting. It's the water supply of 1 million people. And I'm aware that the water supply of the Himalayas supplies water for 1 billion. So it's not just a local thing. The Willow Project on the North Slope, we're definitely concerned about it. But it's a huge issue. We had, because of the rain incidents, we used to have muskox. They're gone. They moved away because the food that they eat from wind-blown ridges is caked with ice. This year we just had 2 inches of rain in December, and we're probably going to have a die-off of Dall sheep. Their food is coated with ice, and they can't live that way. And I don't know what the solutions be, but people here now have a chance to do something for climate change. And it's not just to stop the Willow Project, which that's definitely our concern, but that's just a start. There's people around the world that are having an effect of climate change. And it's time everybody get together, the whole world, to do something. I think it will happen. We're having a lot of young people start to get involved. And that's part of the solution. And now that that's happened, I think things will happen. They're going to be done with these politicians trying to make money off of oil. We've got to get off of the oil and have a clean economy. We might be able to mitigate it. Well, it's the only chance. We've got to try. I've got grandchildren now. So I'm wondering what will their life be 100 years from now. I just heard some good news that they say 5-year-old children now, 50% of them will live to be 100. But that's very good, but what are we leaving them? What will their life be 100 years from now? I think they might forgive us up to the point we didn't know, but now we know climate change is happening. I don't know if anybody will deny it. Even the people who want to do this project, they probably in their heart know it's happening and choose not to do something. They got to start doing something, and to the max. Everybody should do everything they can every day, as much as they can to mitigate it. They might be able to lessen the effects. There's a person, Stephen Hawking, predicted this planet will not be habitable by 2600. I believe it. If we don't do anything, and you see what's happening in the Arctic, you can believe that that's probably true, because we're having such dramatic changes. I have a list of things that are happening. It's long. Everywhere you go, there's effects. It's not just in somebody's imagination. I saw 200 dead caribou on our island. That's real sad for me. It's their food. It's going away. But everybody's got effects. I don't know what effects are here. You know, today they might say, well, climate change is cold. It might not be happening, but it is happening. In Alaska, we've got effects on the wildlife because of the insects. The caribou are being infested with parasites because the parasites have more time to work on them. We've had spruce bark beetle kill trees where there's big areas that are dead trees that are now burning, and in summer there's smoke everywhere. It's all tied into climate. Everything that's adverse. I don't see any good, positive effects of climate change. So I think everybody can relate to that and try to find out what's good about it. I don't think there's a whole lot that's very good. So my hope that everybody will just jump in and do it all they can. I know there doesn't seem to be too many people here today, but you all go tell people and hope they'll write about it and make sure that that something is done. In Alaska, at the AFN, the youth delegation had a resolution passed to address climate change. And that's sort of like Greta Thunberg. She's doing something. She's got a lot of followers. And I think all together we can work on it and have some positive things done. We can't just let it happen. The consequences are just too much. So, okay, we haven't even seen all of what's potentially happening. This issue with the rain in the winter, I know it's going to kill Dall sheep that we have in our mountains. They got to have food, and it's got several inches of ice over it. So, and another thing that's happened, so that's what I'm trying to say, it's not just a local thing in Willow. The whole Yukon River in Alaska is shut down from fishing. People have fished on that river for thousands of years, but now the spawn is not viable. The water's too warm. The warm water doesn't have the oxygen they need, and they just closed the whole Yukon River down. So we got that happening, and our animals dying. The polar bear are predicted to be extinct by 2050, and I could see the last polar bear. I'll be 103, but I could see it. So I'd hate to see that. I mean, it just, you know, polar bear is not our food, but it's just part of the Arctic, and we wouldn't want to see them gone. I've had to kill two polar bear at very short range that came after me. One is about 4 or 5 feet away when I hit it. They were going through the dumpsters in the village. That's not what they should be doing. They should be out on the ocean getting their food like they have for the last million years. But because of our addiction to fossil fuel and their limited ability to get food when they're on the land. This sort of thing is happening. And I don't know what goes on here, but I'm sure there's things in this area that are probably climate change related, and we can make the transition. The technology is there. I see there's some progress in electric vehicles. Where I live, they did a study. Wind is very viable. Wind can take the place of electricity generated by diesel. So there are solutions, and I think we just all got to just get after our politicians, and if they won't do it, fire them and get different ones that will. So yeah, it's too big of a problem just to ignore and think it'll get better. It's not going to get better. I've been involved in this issue for about 20 years, and it just gets more and more and more things that extractive industry wants to do that's adversely affecting us. And there's options. I mean, this Willow project, this is a chance for our president to make good on his campaign promises to not open any new federal areas. So, and I don't think he'd get any argument from Democrats, because that's kind of their agenda, Green New Deal and all that. It's a very serious issue, and they've got some solutions. So we got to encourage them, not encourage them, make sure that if they don't get reelected. We need to come up with a definite plan and address the problem that every one of us on this planet is affected. So thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
Ubangan nudak, ut kawing miu, simans koyak, suli angup kanak koyak. My name is Nudak, Doreen Simmons. I'm from Utkavik, formerly known as Barrow, but we have retrieved our Iñupiat name of our village. I'm from the Simmons and the Angupkana family. Samuel Simmons and Martha are my parents, and Abe Simmons and Mamie Simmons are my grandparents, as well as Eli and Nita Angupkana. I thank the original tribes of this land, the Piscataway. Forgive me if I mispronounce the names. The Piscataway, the Pamunkey, Nantego, the Mataponai, Chickahominy, the Monacan, and the Powhatan. I come here in memory of my Iñupiat ancestors who have moved on and those who are to come. Uwangali, Kingunibud, Pisigibluid, Kairunga. My father, the late Reverend Samuel Simmons, always took the whole family, all 10 at the time, to Alaktak, that's close to Willow, what we are talking about. He would take us camping and hunting for caribou, for ducks, for fish. And after 2 weeks, he would take the whole family back home and then do some serious hunting with the boys and with me along, because I would beg him to let me come because I love to camp. And this way, he would fill the boat that he had made when he found out that reverends could go on vacation. And he would take the whole family east of Barrow, over the coast, and up a river, and go to Alaktak. That was our camping area for many summers. And then when he took the boys and me along, we would come back with enough caribou and fish and birds to feed the whole family for the year. And he had to do this because as a minister, he didn't make enough money to go to the store and buy food. He needed to hunt. And Alakdak and many other camps need to be protected from oil development. As we have heard from Robert, what is happening to the animals. They are dying out because they cannot, their hoofs cannot go through hit through the ice to get to the food that they need. There are no instances that I know of any oil drilling that has not affected the land, especially touches poor communities and communities where Native people and other people of color live. I grew up in the 50s where I saw the water so clean we could dip our cups in the river and drink from it as we were traveling. After seeing 60 years of drilling in the Arctic, especially at the village of Iñupiat, where I lived and worked in 2010 for 2 years, I do not see that happening today. The land is becoming sick. In the village, I see sickness in the community. During the 2 years that I lived there, 2 children, one a 4-year-old and one a baby, not yet a year old. They got the sickness. They had cancer in their bones, leukemia. In a village, not even 500 people in the village. That's a big percentage for such a small village. When I was growing up in the 50s, in the northernmost point of Alaska, Utqiagvik, we had no deaths in the community for years, until an elder passed away. And you know it's different today. When I lived in Iñupiat, the 2 children who had leukemia, one passed away, the other survived. Was it because of the water that had been contaminated upriver by the oil development? I would say it's a big part. Because of oil drilling, yes, there is money, but along with that comes changes like the babies, like suicide, that is happening too often. What we need today, as we all know, are sun, solar energy, and wind farms. We have a lot of wind in the winter. And you know, up there, above the Arctic Circle, we have sunlight 24 hours a day. Solar panels. Those of you working in the oil companies are stuck in the thought that we need to drill for oil. That's archaic thinking. Renewable energy doesn't cause cancer or suicides. There's an elephant in the room. Or Arctic thinking, there's a walrus in the room. It's causing all kinds of trouble, but nobody's trying not to notice, because who wants to fix it? So the mode of operation is to ignore it, and maybe it'll go away and continue doing what we have been doing, what we know how to do. We all know that's not going to fix the problem. And the problem is homelessness, suicide, loss of hunting areas, and more. We may look away, but that doesn't make it go away. The way to fix the problem is to go forward and see the truth. So now I say, I am sad when you want to drill oil on my land, when I know that it will make the animals sick, the animals that my family needs to thrive on. It saddens me when I see parents hurting because their child committed suicide. I hear you say that drilling for oil is the only way for our economy to survive. I know, and I think you know, that oil is not the only way. We have sustainable energy, and that sustainable energy is the sun and the wind. It is always here. Just like Prudhoe Bay oil has come to an end, so will Willow if it starts. The drilling for oil is a roller coaster ride that leads to a dead end. It pains me when you say that more jobs will be created once your oil companies' friends are allowed to drill. But we know that the jobs will go to the outsiders, and the jobs given to the local indigenous will be only temporary jobs. It pains me to know that the health of our people, in the way of joblessness, non-ability to find the caribou and the fish, that our land will suffer by being covered up with oil that leaks out, and I have seen that. And our children will suffer, as always happens when oil is extracted, not only here, but all around the world. And again, people will suffer. We have been through this before. In other countries, activists have been killed. In this country, we may have it better, but not by much, because the way of oil extraction always leads to that dead end. This is not something I grew up with in the 50s. The only death, as I said, was elders who passed on because their job was done. Today, lives are interrupted. Let's find a new way. And it's the old way. That's the way we knew. You may think it's hard to do, but it's doable. Something that is not a quick fix. Let's do renewable energy. Let's do sun and wind. Thank you for your analysis.
Okay, welcome, Adrian. I know everybody is starting to get a little antsy. Let's shake around a little bit. One more time. When I say stop Willow, you say stop Willow. Stop Willow. Stop Willow. Stop Willow. All right, guys. Thank you all for being here today. Kaya na kay plusimanga. Wanga akaluk. Excuse me. Wanga akaluk nulag me today. Adrian Blatchford. Ungala sirmiurunga. Aka nga maktak atata nga Charlie Jr. Ano nga apora Jenny Lee Lu. Charlie Sr. Ano nga apora makirak Lu. Anak tiok. My name is Akaluk, in English, Adrian Blatchford. I'm from Iñupiat, Alaska, which is the southernmost Iñupiat village on the northwest coast, oftentimes referred to as the heart of the Norton Sound or the Arctic Passageway. You guys are going to have to bear with me because I have to read, because when I go off of my mind, it just wanders. My family lives in Iñupiat, and I return to spend summers gathering and harvesting food with them each year. We practice cultural traditions to ensure that future generations learn responsible stewardship through an Indigenous lens, with hands-on experience. I was recently reminded that I stand here as a mother with an obligation to future generations, with an obligation to our homelands, and for those who don't have the privilege of traveling to DC to use their voice to speak against the Willow Project. I do not live in the North Slope, so I cannot attest to the atrocities that occur within oil and gas extraction firsthand, but I can share my experience with climate change beyond those political borders. Excuse me. Alaska may be a vast land, but our people are connected. We have trade relationships that span across the Arctic through generational and cultural ties, where we barter food and goods sourced from the land, waterways, and places we call home. Unlike these political borders, climate change does not discriminate, and it has no bounds. What happens in the north impacts us all. This last fall, Typhoon Merbok made its way up the coast of Alaska, tearing through the land, flooding villages, wiping out traditional campsites where families have gathered since time immemorial to put away their winter harvest, to survive, to thrive. Our way of life, food security, very survival is the land and what it provides. Climate disasters are forcing us to relocate, making hunting and harvesting more dangerous and threatening our existence. Just in my lifetime, we have seen mass krill, seabird, salmon, and other fish species die off on our shores. Mass algae blooms throughout the Arctic passageway. The ocean is rising. Excuse me. The ocean is rising and acidifying. King crab and Alaska salmon industries have plummeted in recent years. The increase in infrastructure disturbs ecosystems, deters migration patterns. The tundra takes 100 years to repair itself. We all know the science. This does not mean we all welcome extractive industries with open arms. I stand here today and demand that decision makers, law and policy makers, and our representatives withdraw from the Willow Project. The incorporation of public lands during the proceedings of an Inksa and Anilka were meant to protect sacred places. Opening this area retracts those promises made to our elders who fought for this protection. A just transition is possible. Say it with me. A just transition is possible. Stop funding false climate solutions. Start by investing into real climate solutions. Help invest in local economies supported by locally sourced food and goods. Validate traditional ecological knowledge, and make a seat at the table for tribal entities to hold meaningful government-to-government conversations and consultation. Funding technology and science that utilizes natural energy resources such as solar, wind, and water power. Invest in our future. Stop Willow now. I want to make it short and sweet, but once again, let's say it. Stop Willow! Stop Willow now! Stop Willow now! Stop Willow now! Stop Willow now! Alright guys, I hope that you guys all take these words that have fallen upon your ears and speak truth into them in the places that they'll fall upon. You know, these people that make these decisions, and that you share with your family and your friends and the people around you that it is important to make this just transition, and it is important to use your voice and to speak out against projects like the Willow projects and other things that are going to harm our home and our way of lives and our very survival in this place. And we can all do it together. Thank you all for being here today.
I have some.
Oh my God.
go get
Don't
warmed up.
forget tissue!
Hey, Nutuk and Robert and Adrian, do you guys want to go to a cafe or something and warm up? Sit down? Do you want to go sit down on a bench or something, too? You're okay? Okay, I'm checking in with you all. Okay. Anyone else need a tissue? Come over here. Take this. We're keeping it dry for you. Yeah, I'm for real. Take that.
You guys were live streaming that too, like you like in my position and everything.
It's wet out here, you guys. Take care of yourselves. I took this from my hotel. It's for the community. Okay, we have 2 more speakers left. Thank you all for standing out here and listening to us. I'd like to invite up Wasabi.
Suvat, Uvango Wasabi na lau michisiga Charla Houseman, Iñupiat sisiga Aklacha, Kalimingrunga, Alaska Mingrunga. What's up? My name's Wasabi. My English name is Charla, and my Iñupiat name is Aklachak. I'm from Alaska. My great-grandmother and her parents lived in the most beautiful place. This place was rich with caribou to eat, fresh air, clean drinking water, and enough fish to provide for the entire family, including their dog team. My great-grandmother stated on an official Bureau of Ocean Energy Management document that she never got sick during her entire childhood. Today, I could never visit and enjoy the same experiences as her in her childhood hometown. This is because she grew up in Prudhoe Bay, Alaska, now labeled one of America's most significant oil fields. Traditional activities are prohibited on these now federal lands. Even if they weren't prohibited, would you drink the water and eat the fish? I've written letters directly from my heart to these politicians representing Alaska who claim to have good intentions for our way of life. It was hard to hear them say the things they were saying while at the same time they were minimizing their detrimental impacts. Here's an excerpt from my amo, my great-grandmother Aklachak, Kate Peterson, in an official Bureau of Ocean Energy Management Impact Assessment report in 1989. Fresh air at Prudhoe Bay. My father traveled far from Point Hope. He hunted for polar bear and fox. My mother followed. We went to Prudhoe Bay at Kuparak, about 15 miles from Beachy Point. I was too young to remember when we moved there. My mother had 2 kids, a boy and a girl, Johnny and Kate. People say that Prudhoe Bay is like a big village now. It's nothing like before. Nowadays, when I fly from Barrow to Anchorage, we land at Prudhoe Bay, so I can see how different. Traveling with traps was our life. There was no Ski-Doo, no Honda, nothing, only dogs. Sometimes 6 dogs, sometimes 9 dogs. Dog team with a big sled load. We would always feed them good. At Prudhoe Bay, while Mama was busy, I'd be playing out in the fresh air. We were never sick, you know. Fresh air was healthy. Later, when we were around people that coughed, I remember asking, "How come you look so much sick? How come that cough?" Mama looked at me with her hand to her mouth and said, "Shh." I just never saw sick people before. The only medicine we ever had was that Vicks and Band-Aids that my father got at the store. I never got those measles that were killing off people. Guess it's because I wasn't around people. I don't know why some kids now always get sick easy. Maybe not enough fresh air. Every year in September, we'd go by dog team to that Kuparak River at Prudhoe Bay and put up a big canvas tent. It was mostly grayling, big 1-foot-long grayling we'd get by hooking in the ice hole. I liked grayling eggs, always look for the ones with the big stomach. Sometimes trout and small grayling would be mixed in, lots of fish. Daddy would make a 2-story ice house to put all that fish inside, siku igluarak, just like a little ice house. It would be about 5 feet high. He'd saw big blocks of really clean ice as big as a sheet of plywood. My mother and father would pull each block with ice tongs, then we helped Daddy stand them up next to each other. He'd make all the walls and leave the top open. Then we mixed the water with snow and filled it in the cracks. He would dump the frozen fish inside that siku igluarak. He's a short guy, all right, but a strong man. Mama, too. Iñupiat are strong, and Mama and Daddy were young. We'd keep hooking fish until that thing was full. October, he put a net under the ice, and we'd catch lots of whitefish. Then he'd put an ice cover on top of the siku igluarak. It would keep that fish frozen all winter. All that time we'd eat frozen or cooked grayling and whitefish. He would go get ice for drinking water and bring a sled load of fish home from the Siku Iglorak and bring it home. The fish lasted all winter for the dogs and us. If there was anything left in April, they put them in the ice cellar. You know, where they picked out the ice way down in the ground. My brother made that one when he came home from Barrow. And that's the end of the excerpt. Today, people back home are concerned about as the permafrost melts. My great-grandmother was raised in Prudhoe Bay before it was labeled an oil field. She spoke of the fresh water, clean air, and all the animals our Nuna, in English land, provided. She never got sick her entire childhood. And I'll finish off with a poem I've written about food security and indigenous health in the Arctic. It's on my heart and mind every night and day. Don't take our way of life away. Don't put us in poverty begging for things while the city folk complain about the problems we bring. Don't take away our independence and our eating right. It's our home, it's our culture. You don't have the right. Thank you.
Kuyanakpak Charla. Pakalagi si Ariga Vanga Nakayak Ichoagak sit na swak munul. Akaga Kor Ichoagak asi Apaga Wilbur Ichoagak ut Kayakavik munulu. Nuixitlu. Asi Akaga Margaret Irvin. Asi Norman Irvin's connected in New York mun. My name is Carlin Itchak. I am from Nome, Alaska, and my grandparents were Wilbur and Cora Ichoagak from Utqiagvik, and Norman and Margaret Irvin from Schenectady, New York. I am the Senior Regional Director for the Alaska region for the Wilderness Society. We're one of the oldest conservation groups in the United States, and our mission is to unite people, unite Americans, to protect public and wild places. Thank you all for showing up today and for standing out here in the sunshine. We appreciate all of you. I know we're shivering, and we want to really thank all our elders for coming so far away, over 4,000 miles. But we also want to thank all of you for being here today in the rain with us in front of the home of the one person in our mind who has the final authority to stop the Willow Project. Stop Willow! I'm here today on behalf of our more than 1 million members and supporters in opposition to the Willow Master Development Project in America's Western Arctic. We are strongly opposed to the Willow Project for two main reasons. First, this project does not have full support of local indigenous communities in Alaska. The mayor of the nearest town, Nuiqsut, Rosemary Atungaruk, has warned that this project would bulldoze through crucial habitat for caribou, fish, moose, which indigenous people rely on for subsistence harvesting. Second, it would be disastrous for the world's climate. Let me say that again. It would be disastrous for the world's climate. The man who lives in the big house across the street behind me campaigned for the presidency with promises of fighting climate change, reducing our use of fossil fuels, and ensuring environmental justice. So why are we still fighting to stop a massive drilling project that would make ConocoPhillips and its shareholders even richer at the expense of Arctic communities and the world's climate? Shame on them. Scientists tell us the Arctic is warming 4 times faster than the rest of the world, and indigenous communities in the Arctic are already living with these adverse cumulative environmental impacts. When your house is on fire, you don't go to the other side of the house and set it on fire. That's exactly what we would be doing. We are also facing, the indigenous people of the North are facing the loss of our food security. We are seeing our coastal villages literally fall into the ocean because of erosion caused by the loss of sea ice extent. The soil thermal degradation caused by the climate crisis is a human rights issue when over 50 communities have to be forcibly removed or move because of the impacts of the climate change crisis. The melting of permafrost is destabilizing infrastructure and destroying food caches, which we call sigluoks. that have been used for generations since time immemorial. This is not environmental justice. Thank you. The administration's own figures indicate Willow would produce 9.2 million metric tons of carbon dioxide a year. That is the equivalent of the emissions of driving nearly 2 million gas-powered vehicles, burning nearly 51,000 cars, rail cars worth of coal. Every year for 30 years. Every year for 30 years. The long-term climate and environmental impacts of approving Willow would be destructive for local communities by reducing air quality and harming the wildlife on which they depend to survive. But on a global scale, the development of the Willow Project would completely undermine the efforts to address the biggest crisis of our time, climate change. The administration has to change its entire approach to oil and gas and stop using our federal lands to produce the greenhouse gas emissions that imperil our children's and our grandchildren's future. Now is the time for this administration to lead us into a just transition off of fossil fuels and toward a more regenerative economy. President Biden must ask himself how he wants to be remembered. President Biden, how do you want to be remembered? 50 years from now, 100 years from now. Do you want to be remembered and known as the president who put America on a path to showing and stopping climate change? Or for helping ConocoPhillips increase profits at the expense of indigenous communities and the rest of the world? The president must consider how this decision will impact the next 7 generations and our Mother Earth. Willow will bring the climate crisis to the point of no return. Willow will bring the climate crisis to the point of no return. The only responsible action he can choose on Willow is the no alternative action. Put people and climate first, Mr. President. Stop the Willow Project. Kuyanakpak.
Stop Willow! Stop Willow! Hi everyone again. My name is Sunny Uvangaruna. I introduced myself earlier, and I want to talk a little bit more about a just transition. One second, sorry. Yeah, move around a little bit to warm up, please. I thank everyone in this group that said something so important. I want to wrap up this rally and by talking about the next steps that we should take. Our Iñupiat community has used oil development profits to fund our public safety, schools, and many other things. We recognize and honor the achievements of those who came before us and allowed our communities to thrive and carry on traditions. However, we recognize there comes a point where the consequences of oil development outweigh our profits. Wealth is not what is in bank accounts. It is what we are able to provide for ourselves and our future generations. In this way, we are not setting up for our future generations to be wealthy and in good health. It is important that we recognize that oil does not last forever. The fossil fuel industry will come to an end soon, whether it be from climate catastrophe or the rational and wise decisions of our leaders. Yes, it will be hard to transition from fossil fuels. Yes, it will be expensive, but there is no greater price to pay than the loss of our only home, Earth. Ensuring communities like our own are able to not only survive, but thrive through this transition into sustainable future is vital to environmental justice. This is what a just transition is. It is a shift from destructive economy to a regenerative economy. But I don't like to think just within terms of capitalism. A just transition is setting the intentions to be a good ancestor and a good relative to each other in the land and water. It means creating new relationships, deconstructing harmful processes of power, and providing for communities most dependent on extractive industries. It also means understanding that there may not be a perfect answer that'll be the forever solution, and we must address our ever-changing needs. For Iñupiat, this means investing in renewable energy. The Arctic is the land of the midnight sun in the summer, and the coasts have unrelenting winds year-round. We have youth that have the intelligent and fresh minds to create solutions that may not have had the opportunity years ago. There is no better time than the present to do better for the future. Kuyanakpak Tavra.
Okay, we have one more speaker. Thank you all for staying out here for so long.
Not going to take long, but I'm bringing the science.
Your regalia looks so good.
All right, give it up for science here. All right, sorry I'm late. I've been in a very bad accident in traffic for a very bad accident. So my name is Dr. Sofia Marjanovic from the Union of Concerned Scientists. I am from the Fort Peck Oceti Sakowee people of the Fort Peck, Assiniboine, and Sioux Tribes Reservation in Montana. My community has experienced oil drilling since the 1950s. When I was growing up, the water came out of our faucets, red, yellow, and orange. It smelled like petroleum and had oil droplets floating atop it. In our community, I witnessed cancer become the top killer of our women. I witnessed sickly children, and I witnessed babies being born blue. My PhD is in immunology and microbiology. I got my PhD in order to get accountability and healing for not only my community that has suffered from the impacts of oil drilling on our reservation, but to ensure that all communities experiencing environmental injustice get the accountability and healing that we deserve. I come to you from the Union of Concerned Scientists, which is an organization that was founded more than 50 years ago by scientists and students at the Massachusetts Institutes of Technology. We use rigorous independent science to help solve our planet's most pressing problems, including climate change and the impacts of environmental injustice. We combine technical analysis and effective advocacy to create innovative, practical solutions for a healthy, safe, and sustainable future. According to the Bureau of Land Management's Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement, the Willow Master Development Plan will cause heat-trapping emissions of over 284 metric tons of carbon dioxide over 30 years. According to the same environmental impact statement, every proposed alternative plan, there will be disturbances to the local water chemistry and the local habitats of vegetation, birds, fish, marine mammals, caribou, and human subsistence needs. The Biden-Harris administration has committed to put environmental justice at the center of its actions and has acknowledged that, quote, for far too long, communities across our country have faced environmental injustices, bearing the brunt of toxic pollution, enduring underinvestment in infrastructure and critical services, and suffering disproportionate impacts from climate change, end quote. President Biden's Justice 40 initiative is supposed to invest in climate change, quote, climate change, clean energy and energy efficiency, clean transit, affordable and sustainable housing, training and workforce development, remediation and reduction of legacy pollution, and the development of critical clean water and wastewater infrastructure. Scientists at NOAA have documented the detrimental consequences of rapid environmental Arctic change, driven primarily by climate change for especially the Alaskan people. It can be read in NOAA's recent Arctic report card released in December of 2022. Studies about communities in proximity to oil drilling sites around the nation regularly show detrimental health impacts to not only the workers, but to the people living near or accessing resources in proximity to oil drilling sites. For example, an article that was recently published and it was a few weeks ago, I keep current with the science, showed increased odds of congenital anomalies, particularly cardiac and circulatory defects, were associated with air and water pollution exposures related to oil and gas extraction in Texas. In November of last year, a study concluded that a community in Los Angeles, California, in close proximity to an oil drilling site, had increased toxic metals in their bodies. Studies regularly show that chemicals associated with the oil extraction and production include carcinogens, mutagens, reproductive toxins, developmental toxins, and endocrine disruptors. In a recent study by the Urban Indian Health Institute, Anchorage was listed as having the third highest number of missing and murdered indigenous women and girls, and Alaska ranks fourth in the nation for the highest number of missing and murdered indigenous women and girl cases. Oil drilling often brings so-called man camps, housing temporary or seasonal workers to indigenous communities, which increases the frequency at which indigenous women and girls go missing and murdered. President Biden's White House needs to consider the missing and murdered indigenous women and girls' impact on more disturbances to the Alaska Native communities. The Iñupiat community deserves to be safe from the tragic impacts of ongoing colonial displacement. President Biden's White House does not get to express concern for climate change and environmental justice while ignoring the science regarding the protections needed by the Iñupiat people. Major expansions of long-lived fossil fuel infrastructure are at odds with the administration's commitments to climate goals. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. One more round of applause for all our speakers today. Okay, another one. Thank you. I would like to invite all our speakers back up and volunteers who helped us today to, come here. Just for you guys to recognize that these are the people who are at the front lines. These are the people who are suffering the most and are here because they want to speak up. Many of us here today who are listening are not Iñupiat or from the Arctic, so it is important to put in effort and time to support those who work on opposing issues like the Willow Project as a form of solidarity. As you heard today, the Willow Project proposes more harms and threats to the Iñupiat communities as well as the entire world. Thank you all for coming and supporting our work and the work these people have done for their community. I would like to invite you all up for a group photo. Yeah, come here. And then you can warm up. Thank you again for coming. Stop Willow! Stop Willow!